Welcome back, everybody, to the Generation Varied podcast. This is the show where we discuss culture, health, geopolitics, sports, rap beef, and everything in between. I am your host, Caleb Doris, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Ben Okenge and Jack Widener, here with our wonderful producer, Sophie St. Furman, behind the scenes. Guys, how are we doing this week?
Well, this week in rap beef news, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper. I'm just kidding. We can't do that one more time.
Somebody excelled.
Yeah,
Somebody excelled right there.
Somebody was like, "Oh, come on, not this again." No, but in all seriousness, there was a pretty big event in the rap beef news this past week with Kendrick dropping a new song called Euphoria. Listeners, if you haven't heard it, go take a listen. Also, go back and listen to the past maybe like 3 episodes, I'd say, or 4, where we really broke down all that's been going on for the past month or so with all this hip hop beef. And we're going to get deeper into that next week with some of the updates that surely will unfold over the next 7 days.
And listeners, the reason we are still like excited about all of it, because this is the 3 best rappers alive at the moment, and just to see them going at each other, we are blessed to hear all of this. But for me, my week's been good. It's been, our pool actually just opened at our apartment today, first day of May, so summer is knocking on our door. I know, like, when I finished working today, I went to the porch and I just saw a lot of people, families, just people reading on the bleachers. I was like, wow, like, that's, summer is almost here, which got me thinking about, for both you, Caleb, and Ben, everybody has a favorite season, but I want to focus more on the summer. Up to this point in your life, what has been your favorite summer so far? I know you have better summer in the future, but up to this point in your life, which summer is your favorite one? And tell us why.
I'd probably say my favorite summer is probably summer, and it's gonna be so cliche to say it, but summer of 2016, classic summer. It was right before Trump took office, right before that big presidential, everything that happened with his presidential candidacy. It was a really good summer for music. I was like just recently graduated. And I had like gotten a job, and so I had a little bit of money. I had like my little car. I was running around town. It was also the last summer that I believed everything perfectly as I did as like I grew up. So it was like I wasn't yet jaded and like disenfranchised with the establishment yet. So I loved that summer. And then I'd probably say second one is probably summer of 2019. I was going into my like junior year of college or something like that, and maybe junior year, and it was just a fun time. Like, I had been at Asbury for like a year at that point. I had a ton of friends. I was young, wild, and free, and just felt like I did nothing that summer but honestly party with my friends, and it was a good time.
Caleb, I think one is like more like becoming more of yourself, like you kind of understand, your self-development, understanding yourself, but also just friends. Like that summer when it just friends, and I think everyone has that summer and that's just what's on the schedule. It might be the same thing, but it's with the same people or different groups of people. So that's awesome.
Yeah. My favorite summer, hands down, summer of 2020, COVID year. I know
that was a fun summer.
Yeah, I know a lot of people had like a rough COVID year, and I'm really sorry if that was the case for you, but 2020 was a great year for me, and especially that summer. I actually had some really rough circumstances going on. I was going through a breakup that was like really, really tough for me at that time. But like, I learned so much about myself that summer. I was out tree planting. I got to tree plant with my younger brother and made some of the best memories of my life during that season.
And
Also, it was
pause.
like,
What is
yeah.
tree planting? Then why don't you
Oh man,
elaborate briefly on what that is, just to
I will briefly,
contextualize?
but one of these days we're gonna have an episode where I break it down more in depth. But for those of you who don't know, I am a professional tree planter, and I spent 5 summers of my life out in the middle of nowhere in northwestern Canada, planting trees for like reforestation. Um, and I've planted over 500,000 trees in my life. So
Put on your resume.
yeah, for real. That's always like my fun fact when people ask
That is
about
Ben,
such.
that.
that sounds country as hell.
It's pretty grimy, bro. You live in a tent for 3. I've lived now well over a year of my life just sleeping on the ground in a tent in the middle of the forest. So, um, but
Wow.
anyway, that summer, 2020, planting trees with all my best friends, my little brother, lots of precious memories from that. I made stupid amounts of money that summer too, which definitely helps with all the good memories. It was like every day I'd come back from this job having made like more money than what I could spend, and it was really really fun.
Ben,
So
I don't know if I've ever had more money than I could spend, pal. I can get pretty creative.
I love the summer of growth and summer of dough. For me, my favorite summer is 2021.
mm,
I love how all of our summers is pretty recent versus like a childhood summers. So for 2021, it started off with me living with my parents. I haven't lived with my parents for a long time, and I went to boarding school for high school. I went to college and lived away from my parents. So I graduated 2021. It was the first time I got to live with my parents for a month, and that was just really fun. Just like keep the mundane going. And then I went to Tokyo for the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games. So I was there for 9 weeks, and it was just it was very interesting because it was COVID. Only people can enter the country of Japan, where if you're involved in the games, and I was one of the lucky ones who was part of that. And 9 weeks working with people my age from all of the country, and we worked by day, and at night we'll just be going to different parts of Tokyo, and yeah,
Drinking.
yes, yeah.
and
Let me read
misbehaving for
between the
real.
lines for
Yeah,
y'all from what Jack is
It
saying.
was fun. It was, oh man, I it was just like the best. I was getting paid, flights were paid for. I was working, doing something fun, and meeting new people almost every day, like for 9 weeks straight. So, and then I got a job by the end of that summer. So it was just like a great transition into what is now my adult life, and where I'm still working at. So it was amazing.
that's dope. I love that, and I've heard you talk about that summer so many times. So that I kind of makes me a bit jealous. I would have liked to go to the Olympics, you know.
Yeah, there's so many stories we can dive in that was another time, just like the tree planting, and I mean summers. Like
Summer
there's so many
jobs
things
in
that you can.
general, I feel like
Yeah,
we all have some really
like
interesting summer job stories.
Caleb, we never talk about this. Like you worked at Texas Roadhouse, right? Like to me, that's very interesting. Like not just like the way, but like outside of the service, like there's some things that I would say you would say like a lot of your passion for sales started from there. If I'm wrong, then let me know. But like, it's so interesting.
Yeah, no, I did so much with my summers. I always had like multiple gigs in the summer. I used to sell roofs door to door. I worked at Texas Roadhouse, like full
Hustling.
time. I I normally had 2 jobs over the summer. I used to mulch in high school. I mulched.
No
Um,
way. That's crazy.
dude, that right there, that convinced me of like, you better go get you an education, because this right here,
You're like, this ain't for me.
I
I'm not
said
the one.
this sweating, this sweating shit, not for me, fam, not for me. It literally, I remember like go after wheelbarrow, and I remember thinking like, y'all, we're gonna have to do something else because this manual labor ain't for me.
That's funny, bro, because I feel like all I've ever done in the summers is manual labor jobs, so I'm accustomed to it. I I've got used to all that, honestly. But I also never had two jobs, so
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I feel like it's so normal, or like so many of my friends worked at like the movies over
Right.
the summer. That was like one job that I've never had. I've never worked at the movie theater.
Yeah, same. That was like a super common job, like around high school age and even
Yeah.
into like college for the summers. I actually went and watched a movie just this past weekend. My wife, Abigail, and I were just hanging out on Saturday night. Didn't know where, what we wanted to do, where we wanted to go. We decided, all right, when in doubt, our go-to, let's find a movie. Let's see what's in theaters. We didn't
I
even know
love
what
that.
was in theaters at the time. We had to look it up. And I was like, Civil War. This movie looks interesting. Um, we didn't watch a trailer or really anything. Um, and we just took off and watched it. And so let me break down the plot for you guys for this movie because it was a super unique movie. So the wiki plot from it is in a dystopian future, in a dystopian future of America, a team of military embedded journalists races against time to reach Washington, D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. So basically, the concept of this movie is that there's this president who's leading the country at that time um, basically becomes corrupt and elects himself for a third term. And so there's this uprising that starts. And this militia is rising up against the US government to take down the president. And so we follow along with these war photographers who are journalists documenting this story. And this movie is absolutely crazy. Did you guys like hear anything about this movie before just now?
I heard about it, just like I seen the trailer. I was invited to go watch this movie, but I was like, look, when I go to the movie theaters, I want to escape. I want to be entertained. I don't want to spend money on watching something I know is going to be heavy. So like that's just my personal preference. Like I will watch Godzilla versus Kong over Civil War, because some movies are meant to be seen in big screen, and I just wasn't convinced this was one of them. However, with that being said, Ben, I feel
He
like
said,
you're.
I'll wait for it on Netflix."
He said, unfortunately, I have a set of rules that I follow if a movie's worth my time and money
In a
of going to
theater.
the movies. And
In a
unfortunately,
theater.
Ben, this movie did not make the requirements, but we're happy to reconsider it when it goes to DVD and streaming.
I will watch it. Ben, I love
We'll
what
go get
you
it
and
at
Abigail.
Blockbuster.
I'm dead. I love what you and Abigail did though. Just show to a movie theater and like, oh, let's see what's on the program.
Yeah.
Honestly, need to do that sometimes. But I love watching trailers. I love to see like what people are talking about. But no, I didn't watch this movie. The only thing I know about it was just this was through a photojournalist perspective,
Mhm.
which I thought was very interesting because history has shown they just take pictures and show what's happening and what's the truth. So I'm curious, like, what came out of that for you, um, from you
Mhm.
watching the movie.
Yeah.
There's a. Go ahead. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, no, my thoughts on the movie after now having watched it is the plot was great. I love the idea of it. I thought it was like a realistic notion, a really good, like accurate depiction of what this type of situation could actually look like. The characters were awesome. You get super invested really quick. But one thing I wish I had known going into it was like, this movie's gruesome. Like, I personally, I don't really like watching violent movies. And just in general, I feel like with movies, I try to be like really conscious of what's like entering my brain. And so like, I know this sounds really lame, but like when I know a movie is like rated R, I'm gonna go find out like why, just so I can like mentally prepare. Like, okay, is that something that I actually want to see? Like, if it's gonna be like gruesome, gory scenes, I don't want to
Yeah.
watch that. But that's just me. Um, with this one, it was just off the cuff. We just went. I didn't know anything about it, and man, it was so violent. Like, it was very graphic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my thoughts on it are this. Jack, I agree with you. I don't like to entertain myself with stuff like that. And like my roommates, for example, think I'm crazy, but it's like I'm not watching horror.
Oh,
I
I don't
I'm
do
not
that.
watching
Mm-mm.
I don't watch gruesome stuff. The last thing that I saw that was super gruesome that I just like made a rule for myself, and it's because I didn't eat for 2 days when I saw this. The Netflix show Daredevil. There's a scene where they unalive somebody by crushing their head with like a car door.
Oh.
When I tell you, when I saw that, I literally did not eat for like 2 days because it made me that sick to my stomach. So I don't watch super gruesome stuff.
Yeah.
I'm in that same boat with you, Ben.
So
I don't
you're not
need
gonna want to
people.
watch this one for sure.
Yeah,
It was
not
really
for me.
explicit, and honestly, my main thing with it was like, I get it. It's realistic. That's like that is a part of the movie and part of that world that you're entering into. But like for me with a movie, like it doesn't have to be so explicit. Like you don't have to be seeing horrible scenes. They could be more suggestive, more implicit with it, give you like an idea of maybe what's happening without necessarily showing you.
See, from my perspective, I think they most likely did that on purpose. Like, I think the
Mm-hmm.
director probably wanted it to be that gruesome because I think, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, Americans have gotten really comfortable with this idea of like, we're, we're too divided. We need to head for a civil war. And it's like, pal, I don't think you know what that means. Like you're talking about like as when people bring it up, or like even when people on like the left bring up like, well, we need to have a revolution here. It's like, okay, so here's
Mm-hmm.
realistically what you're proposing. You're proposing 10% of Americans die.
Right.
And what I'd like you to do, if you're comfortable with that, because that's 33 million people, I'd like you to go through all of your Facebook friends, find me 10% of them that you're willing to let go of. And that's literally what I tell people because whenever, even when somebody brings it up casually, it's like, I don't think you, like, I don't think you understand the implications of what you're saying when we talk about a civil war and war in general. You're talking a minimum, like good numbers is 10% of the population, babe. You
Yeah.
you you find 10% of your friends and family that you're willing to put to sacrifice towards the cause that you have, and
Yeah.
then we'll talk.
Yeah, no, you're getting to exactly where I was going with this is just like personally, I know I'm biased. I'm a pacifist. I would never go to war. There's no cause that I feel passionate about enough that I would be willing to die for or let other people die for that matter. Um, and so yeah, this movie just is like a really good commentary on society because people are actually talking like that. Like they talk about revolutions like you're talking about and like it's like joke around almost about this idea of civil war. Um but like this movie shows us like that is not what we want. And Americans
Mm-hmm.
are just have no idea the notion of
Yeah.
what war truly is like. So let me ask you guys this, like when you think of America in the context of war, like what's the first thing that comes to mind?
For me, it's obvious. Well, not obviously, but like what comes to my mind is the world wars. World War I, World War II. But when you ask that question, the way you phrase it in terms of like something that happened here in on the grounds, like Pearl Harbor, like that. That's kind of what my immediate thought goes to. Like that wasn't the war didn't take place there, but like that was a place that was attacked. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's kind of where my head goes to.
Honestly, this is kind of bad, but I'd probably say all of the war crimes that America has committed over the last 100 years.
Yeah,
I
understandable.
mean, y'all, we talking millions of folks. Like it's not good when you start looking at the numbers, especially when you look at people like who is it that he died like 5 or 6 months ago. He was a general that dropped. I think like it was like over 2,000. Like it's like the most bombed place in the entire world. It's like the I think it's Laos and those countries and like Southeast Asia. Like the list of American atrocities are very long.
Yeah,
So that's what I think of.
right. So with both of those things that you guys bring up, that is leading me to what I'm talking about right now. Is like Pearl Harbor is something that's war related that happened here in America. Um, 9/11. But aside from those two events, there's no real war that has been fought here on American soil since the American Civil War, which ended in
Yeah.
1865. So I think Americans are just totally numb to this idea of like, and they see war as this thing that happens elsewhere, like it's other. But to
Yeah.
think of what it would actually look like here, this movie's a good depiction of that. And it's shocking and scary because, like, when war is happening, it's not like everything stops. Life goes on. Like people still need to go work the grocery store and like all these things are still going on. And this movie does a really good job of depicting that.
Hmm.
Um, One of the reasons why I'm so anti-war is like, and especially like having seen this movie Civil War, it like brought my mind to a civil war that's like closer to home for me. Like I'm a Rwandan citizen, and so the civil war that happened in Rwanda, the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi people from 1994, that's like what this movie was making me think of.
Mm.
This was like a horrific event where, in a span of just about 100 days, 800,000 people died, 2 million people fled the country. Um, just to put that in perspective, the entire Holocaust, so 12 years, 6 million Jews died. And so that's about 7.5 times as many as who died in Rwanda. But the difference is in Rwanda, that happened in 100 days. And uh, in Europe that happened over the course of 12 years. So horrible events. But that leads me just to my last thought. Like, do you think that this like narrative that's going on is legit, or do you think people are just talking? Like, are we on the brink of civil war here in America?
Um, my this is a yes and no answer for me. I think there is a lot of noise that's being made, and from my experience, just the last 6 years being in the U.S., like started to realize, oh, like people who are extreme usually speaks the loudest, like the voices, whether that's media or on social media, just like they have the microphone. So to me, it's like, oh, like that's a lot of times like what agenda is being pushed here. But fast forward to where we are at right now, it feels like, I mean, since like even January 6th incident to now, it feels like radicalization has just led to people like it doesn't. For example, like it doesn't matter how we get things done, we gotta get it. We gotta make it happen. So that's how I kind of see some of how people talk about the presidency. Like, doesn't matter how Biden wins or how Trump wins, we need to do whatever it takes to make sure they win. like it doesn't matter what happens along the process. So like to me, like that kind of narrative or conversation, like that is what's dangerous for me, because it leads people away from their moral code, you know, along the process. So that's a part where I think can be dangerous, is when you're radical about something and the confirmation bias really only like centering on one perspective and not allowing to be yourself be wrong, or recognize that, like, you know, there's two sides of the story, not way more. So I think um no, I don't think it's happening, but at the same time, I hear a lot of noise about it, and um, I mean, I all of this say, like, I hope it doesn't happen, and I don't want to see this happen in my lifetime. I never want to see war first person, or even like just what we're seeing around that's happening around us right now. Like it's, I feel like I wasn't really aware of life when 9/11 happened. So like I don't really have a reference to a crazy event that's really close to home. Um, so I feel like right now that's kind of happening. Like, oh, like this is a reference point for me in terms of what's been happening recently, from 2 years ago to right now.
Yeah, I don't think that we are on the brink of civil war for no other reason other than our politicians aren't fist fighting on the congressional floor yet. When I start seeing, fists flying from our representatives, then that would be concerning. But most everything is just a smoke and pony show. We know because of different things within our government, like the ability to lobby, the ability to back politicians with corporate interests. We know that our government officials are not working towards the interest of the general American people. So I think and you have to think, like, they have sociologists working for them. They keep a pretty close beat on the general public. I think if they anticipated that, I think they would start to slightly adjust the gives that they have for us to
Mm-hmm.
avoid that. But really, when it comes down to it, I think Americans are too comfortable. I mean, people that talk about civil war most oftentimes are the people that couldn't jog to their mailbox and back. So I
That's
don't want
actually what I
to.
thought you were gonna say. I
I don't
thought
want
for
to.
sure you were gonna say people are too soft to actually go to war.
No, literally. It's like people have so much keyboard courage, and I'm very
Yep.
confrontational. Like, my favorite thing is to catch somebody who's like gone off on me on social media and just like walk up to them and just like stare at them in the face and say, "Hey, you had a lot to say. Like, let's have a conversation." And the way people back, like, I'm very confrontational. You know what I'm saying? I've yet to find that is a common trend amongst Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most people have keyboard courage. I think in 20 years, we're going to lock Mark Zuckerberg and the other tech, billionaires up for driving the algorithm to divide us for
Yep.
profits. But I don't think we're headed towards a civil war,
Yeah.
TBH.
I think one more thing on this, not necessarily civil war, but we're seeing the polarization is, we're seeing way more, um, like it's more identifiable, the polarization, and that's not civil war, but that's obviously maybe a formula of a civil war. Of course, it has to be, because it's two different sides. So we obviously are seeing a lot of that in over the last 4 years. So there's definitely a lot of polarization. But yeah, Kayla, I agree. Like I don't.
Yeah.
It's not close for a civil war.
There's a lot of polarization, and I mean, one of the areas that's really polarized that we haven't talked about yet on the podcast, and something that I don't want us to dive too far into today, because I think that the topic deserves a lot more attention than what we can give it today. So I just really want to talk about some of the things that are surrounding the Israeli Palestine conflict, specifically the campus protests that have been going on within the U.S. Over the last couple of weeks. So, Ben, Jack, what do you guys know about the campus protests?
Yeah, so I will caveat in the beginning, I haven't followed this as closely as I want to. I'm not on the campus. I don't know anybody who's part of the protests personally, so I'm only can speak to this or give my observation from what I've seen online, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I have heard about it. Just a lot of university or students are setting up camp. They're blocking buildings, making protests, and has a lot of them what seems like resulted in a lot of hostile situation for those who are protesting, whether that's pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, both sides. Like we are seeing a lot of violence, not in all campus, but like it is pretty um yeah, it's happening almost in a lot of places. So that's all I know. And I read a lot into it. I've seen a lot of videos, but that's kind of, yeah. Like I'm not totally up to date in terms of what's happening on each campus, and what group is leading this. But most of the time, it's just students and faculty and the campus staff.
Yeah, I mean, I have a kind of a interesting perspective from being like I basically live on a college campus. Like I'm on medical campus, but it's close enough to like the undergrads. Um, and like OSU has had a lot of crazy events. Like it's pretty normal at this point with the way things have gone to like get the, campus wide emails or like campus police emails, that kind of thing, just warning people about like violence that may be happening around different parts of campus, areas to avoid, that kind of thing. Um, so I haven't personally like gotten involved or like invested really in looking into like really everything that's happening on campus. Because I honestly I know there's a lot of negativity that I just don't really want to like allow to have real estate in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll caveat that for our listeners with what you just said. I know that it is within your character that you're not shying away from it because it's just negative.
Right.
You're yeah, no, I
Yes.
just want to
No,
caveat that.
yeah, no, thanks for doing that actually, because the last thing I want people to think when I say that is that it's like some kind of like, I would call it like an intellectual laziness, where it's like,
Yeah,
this is something that's hard to talk about, hard to think about. And so for that reason, I just don't want to go there, which unfortunately is a stance that a lot of people take about this.
yeah,
And really, realistically, it is just like intellectual laziness.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm it's when it comes down to it, I mean, oh gosh, I have so many thoughts, but I'll give a brief overview here for our listeners. So, pro-Palestinian students have occupied buildings at universities like Columbia, leading to numerous arrests and expulsions. Clashes with pro-Israel counter-protesters have also occurred at places like UCLA, where violence broke out. The University of Texas actually um, had a little bit of violence broke out that was sort of started or sparked by the police that they brought in. Once the police were escorted off campus, there hasn't been any reported violence since. So I think that's a good example of how organizing protests and also coaching people on how to be effective and a part of a protest is really really important, because I know that they had some very strict rules on how students were allowed to engage and how they weren't allowed to engage. When something like this happens, everybody pops out with a microphone and a camera trying to get a sound clip for social media, right? And they had trained the students that, like, if somebody wants a statement, if somebody has a question, if somebody's showing up to with a camera or a microphone, please direct them over to our PR person who handles this. And anybody that was trying to get clickbait content or something like that, they were just saying, we're choosing not to engage. We're choosing not to answer your questions right now. You're more than welcome to be a part of the protest if you'd like. And there were so many content creators that were having like mental breakdowns on camera because they're like, "What do you mean
Really?
you won't answer my questions? What do you mean like, well, you don't believe in what you're doing here?" And they're like, we're choosing not to engage with you. And there was actually one content creator that started like, this is the scariest thing I've ever been a part of. Nobody will talk to me. Nobody will talk to me. And it was like, I think whoever organized that, like, you did so good because no drama started, no violence started, there wasn't back and forth, you didn't detract from your point, and those content creators look really stupid for putting out content that's basically like, I walked around campus all day and nobody would talk to me. But anyways, all of that to say, there's a lot that's going on with all of that. The biggest thing that I hate are people that are like, and I hate being this person when people are like, "Well, there are two sides to both stories." I don't want to be that person. I don't want to share my opinion on the conflict just yet. I do want us to wait for that, for maybe a couple of episodes in the future where we can really sit down and give the conversation the response that it deserves. Because I do want to have a greater conversation. But Jack, Ben, have you guys ever been a part of a protest before? What are your thoughts on the protests that are going on right now regarding the Israeli-Hamas conflict?
Yeah. Personally, I've never been a part of a protest. There's actually there's not been a social cause that I felt like me going and protesting um would like benefit me, or I don't know how to word that, like, or not just benefit me. There's not been an opportunity for me to bring about change through protest. That's the best way I could put it. And so for that reason, I've never participated in any. Um, and my thoughts on like the protests that are happening right now, I think it's like a great way to like spark dialogue. I just think that like um the avenue isn't always the best. Like I I I don't think like the whole like college campus thing is as much about really like standing up for what people believe in. And I don't know, sometimes it feels like to me it's more just something that people want to say they were a part of when I see it in college campuses. um
See, I disagree. I do. I think there's a long history of college students being very active politically and honestly making change and being effective with protesting. And so I've been to three protests, and then I have helped out like provide supplies at two of them, and it was during the George Floyd um during the summer of the killing of George Floyd, that summer of COVID.
mhm.
And I was bringing down half gallons of milk to people that were being sprayed by the police. Actually, one of Ohio's Congress elected Congress officials, Congress. It's a woman, so I don't. Do we say Congresswomen?
Maybe.
Congresswoman. Yeah.
If we
Congresswoman, I
don't,
think.
you did, so we know what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
Congressperson who is a woman. Um, literally tweeted, whoever brought this milk and like kept it over here, thank you, because like I had to use it today because I got sprayed. Like,
Wow.
police walked, and the crazy thing is that they have it on video. They walked up to City Hall back in 2020 like on a horse and just pepper sprayed like half the City Hall in the face, just standing there outside with the protesters. And it's like, when I see stuff like that, it's like, bro, how could you stand with the establishment? It's like, how could you stand against people that are just trying to make their voices heard? I am so pro make your voice heard. It's the reason why, and I don't want to get on a patriot trip here, but when we talk about like my, at least my values for a country, like I love like First Amendment, baby. you have a right to make your voice heard in this country. You have a right to stand on a street corner. You have a right to stand on a public place. You have a right to stand on a college campus
It's
and
true.
shout your grievances. And I think every single person should be a part of something like that at some point in their life, you know?
I personally haven't been part of the protest. I think, well, one, during the summer of 2020, I was in a crazy I was on social media. I actually had no clue what's happening because I was selling books. Like I was in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea what was going on. So Ben, you
Wait,
probably
are you not allowed to have your phone during the Southwest Advantage?
no. I'm only
Bro,
using my
yeah.
fixed page, like no social media.
You were like me.
called
I was
Becca.
planting trees. I didn't know anything about what was happening until I
called
got
Becca.
back.
Yeah, I called Becca
Yeah.
30 minutes on Thursday and 1 hour on Sunday. That's it, all week.
Oh, hell
it
no.
was laser focused. I'm locked in, hitting my goals. But I think what's happening on these campuses has got me more. Well, I listened to read and listened to a few things about the history of protests on campus, and what I come to realize, Caleb, you said like college campuses like Harvard, Columbia, Ivy League, it's a place they want free speech to, like, and they want to embody that. So they encourage that. There's so many great things that came out of it. Whereas there's other school, most of the time private schools or religious school, there are parameters or rules about how you go about protests. And and I think, like I said, there's free speech, but there's this thing called civil obedience. Basically, like if you sit if you sit in a restaurant that's a segregated place and you're breaking the rule, but then you have to submit to the consequences, which in that case, you're highlighting how absurd this is, in the process of, like, oh, you're being arrested for sitting at a restaurant that's segregated. Like, okay, like there is something wrong here. Therefore, like, let's talk about this change. And there's a lot of changes that came out of that. And when I was reading about the college campuses, it looks like history has shown a lot of times the adults are need to be the one who kind of like set, like the campuses, like set the rules about how to go about protests, because it's still the campus. There's a rule like, hey, where can you do it? What is the time? What is the manner you can do that? Because you're promoting free speech. So, for example, while there's pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel also should have the same free speech to also have the space to do that. So now what we're seeing,
Oh,
what I'm
definitely, yeah.
seeing is like,
Agreed.
it's kind of creating a hostile situation. Like, I don't know what the university are going to do when they come back next year for these campuses that have these protests that's happening on their campus. Like, what is the culture going to be like? It feels like they're just waiting for it to be over, because a lot of these universities aren't really saying anything. They're just letting it happen. And another thing I noticed is a lot of these protests and a lot of campuses are facilitated by campus faculty, campus staff. And when you protest, you're breaking the rule. But in the process, you also need to submit to the consequences, which is civil obedience. So what a lot of people, what I'm reading, is like they're kind of shocked when they get suspension or when they get probation or like more intense like consequences. They're like, wait, what? What I'm doing is just, therefore I shouldn't be met with consequences. But that's like the process of being a protest, because when you're not submitting to the consequences, technically that's being lawless. With all of that being said, I think the way these students have been met with consequences is really extreme. Having snipers on campus, bring a whole military, like,
yeah,
I think there is definitely the way they make consequence is very extreme. But I think some people really recognize what they're going into when they protest. And I think the expectations aren't set. Not being violent, not being hostile, not harassing people, following the campus procedure, like, hey, you can block this building, hey, you can set up your tent, but it doesn't matter what flag you wave. By this time, you have to leave, because if you don't leave, you're breaking the rule. Therefore, you're going to be meeting with consequences. There needs to be people who set, like you said, like, who can be the one who says something. Like, everyone should be able to say something, but like controlling what is being shared, like what is the goal here. So I feel like there's a lot of misdirection that's happening on campus, where we're seeing like Kelly said, like a lot of violence, which is like, whoa, like this is kind of getting kind of crazy. And I don't know, that's just from a school perspective. In terms of, I feel like a lot of campuses don't know how to go back, like what is the reboot program for this, because
yeah. I think that one of the major problems here is that politically, universities got very active with putting out political statements.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with doing that as an institution or a brand is that now you've set a precedent that you put out a political statement anytime something happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was really weird when back in 2020, a bunch of brands were coming out saying, hey, we support, George Floyd and his family, and like a bunch of school institutions. And I don't think that it was wrong, but it's like you've conditioned the public now to expect a statement
Mm-hmm.
from you. And when it doesn't happen, because it's a much more divided issue, now you have a lot of unrest. And so I think there's a lot of current unrest that we can go back to and point to. Hey, like y'all set this precedent of commenting on everything. Now people want you to, and now that you're not, it's creating issues for you. So yeah, no, I think you're spot on.
I love that you brought that point up, because schools like Harvard, Columbia, they do take a stance most of the time traditionally, but now it's like if they enforced, like, hey, let's say they go back to campus next year and they set the rule, like they have the reboot button, they need to set rules about how to go about protest on campus. No harassing, no violence. Free speech is number one. Promoting free speech is number one. Being like, hey, following the time, place, and manner, like this is where you can protest, this and that. But it feels like if, let's say, Harvard or Columbia does that, it feels like counterculture to what they're trying to do, I guess. But anyways, I just read a lot of things, listened to a lot of conversation that has brought these thoughts. These are not my original thoughts. Like, these are just me. I'm observing, like Kayla, like you said, like all this thing deserves way more attention than what we're doing right now, like the 15-20 minutes. Like, this doesn't justify like there's just so much to unpack there, and it's still happening. There's schools are finishing in like a week or two, so we'll see what happens.
And protests are expected to go into the summer, so I mean, we will see what happens this summer, man, because I think it'll be very interesting, especially with the presidential election, with everything that's going on with Israel Hamas. The summer is shaping up to be very lively.
Well, transitioning to a more lighter topic for us listeners. We talked about summer earlier and what was special about it, what made them great. Ben and Caleb, I kind of want to finish this episode by asking you both, what are your 5 essentials for making the summer amazing? And this could be an item, this could be just some type of vibe. Like, this is open interpretation, like, what is your 5 essential for the summer?
Yeah. Number 1 on my list for a good summer is very easy. Bug spray. I personally, listen, man, I'm from Canada. I'm from the land of a million lakes. Okay, mosquitoes, they love me. They're everywhere in Canada.
That is such a Black person's response about summer, when somebody's like,
Yeah.
what's an essential? Bug spray.
Bug spray.
Gotta have bug spray.
Listen, man, I can put up with a lot of crazy stuff, and like even when I was tree planting, I was man, some horrible conditions. One thing I was never gonna miss out on though is bug spray. I can't have mosquitoes all over me. Number two, um, is gonna be some good music. Um, I need good music all the time, but especially in the summer when I feel like I generally have more time to listen to music.
Yeah.
The vibe is just right. I'm outside, I'm in the sun, like
Outside.
exactly. Like music, you gotta have it.
What's one of your favorite like summer songs like of all time?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot.
Like what makes you think of summer? I have mine. I'll let you think of yours. My go-to song that reminds me of summer is that Rihanna song that's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Chance that I freaking weekend. I hear that, I'm like feral.
Yo,
Feral.
cheers to the free. That was such a good song.
A banger, bro. A
Wow.
banger.
I would say mine is
That
basic, but it's Calvin Harris. Like When I Met You in the Summer. When I met you
And I
in
met you
the
in the summer. Yes, Jack. That's a good one too.
mine might be Childish Gambino. It feels like summer. I
Oh,
I love that chill vibe when I'm
That's a
out
good
for a
one.
walk in the summertime. Like I can see the music video playing in my head. I love
I
that
love it.
song.
Yeah.
So that's two.
Third on the list for me is uh the gym. I love going to the gym, but
You
particularly
know
in the
that's in the
summer.
formula.
Yeah, you know it's in the mix. But the thing is though, in the summertime specifically, I love finding gyms that have like some kind of outdoor component. Like whether it's a
Yeah.
section of it that's outside or whether it's even just like the gym I go to right now, they have like these huge garage doors that open up and so it's like a really cool vibe. I love that. And then also like, in the summer it's important, like I want to look lean, I want to look shredded, and like when I spend more time shirtless I need to be in the gym more. um get some get a good tan, all that kind of stuff. It all goes hand in hand. um Number four is ice cream.
Essential.
Yes,
Essential. What's your
honestly,
go-to?
go to ice cream. Ooh, I'm
Ben loves ice
probably
cream.
some. Yeah, I do. Jack knows this about me. When I was at Asbury, listen, I'm gonna just say this real quick. I won't go deep into it. I gained 20 pounds in about 6 weeks at one point when I was at Asbury because I was eating 2 bowls of ice cream with every single meal that I ate in the cafeteria. So ice cream
Love that.
alone just wrecked my body. Um, anyway, I don't know. I would have to say anything that's like uh, got some kind of like cookie or brownie in it. Anything that's like something like that. That's what I want. Lastly, cold beers and margaritas. I need,
Essential.
yeah.
Essential.
I'm a
Isn't that
I
like
love
a
I love
Listen,
um, I love a good beer. And my wife loves a good margarita. So when it's summertime, it's nice out. We're chilling in the sun. Maybe we're on the beach. We're just going back and forth between margarita and beer, margarita, beer. And so that's a fun vibe for us.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Caleb,
I think
what's your
for
five? What's your five essentials?
five essentials, number one is lots of sun. We gotta have sun. I am a light skin through and through. I am at my peak powers.
Mm-hmm.
I am at my peak strength
Don't tell them our secrets, Caleb.
when I am sun kissed, okay, by Apollo. Um, that is number one. Gotta have a lot of sun. I honestly love sweating. Like I love to be sweaty. This is probably TMI. It's my podcast. I don't care. I love to be sweaty. I love the feeling, and really what I think came from it is football because I played football like for 12 years. I'm just so used to sweating in the summer that I literally enjoy sitting out in a lawn chair in the sun and like getting hot and sweating. Like I just like it.
I feel that.
So I would say lots of sun. Number two, gotta have you a little honey somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Got me a little honey right now that I'm
Love
trying to
that.
plan out a little trip with over the
Nice.
summer. Essential.
Essential.
You know?
Definitely.
You gotta have a fresh fade, man,
All summer.
Ooh.
bro.
All summer.
Caleb, I literally was just looking at myself in this little thing here, and I was like, I need a cut bad.
Bro, I just scheduled like all of my appointments out to like August, and like in the summer, I'm like
You're gonna be crispy no
I'm
matter
like
what.
every 7 days kind of guy. I'm like, listen, if we're out here this summer, we're gonna be out here this summer. You know
Wow.
what I'm saying? So gotta be fresh. Oh gosh, how many is that? Is that 3?
I think so.
Yes, 3.
Okay, that's 3. Next one I'm gonna say is concerts. We got to be at concerts in the summer.
Good one.
Yeah.
Got to be at concerts.
I never
in the
experienced
summer.
that yet. I need to do that during summer.
Jack, essential, buddy. There's
I
so
know.
many good ones going on.
No.
And then the last one I'll say is I love for the summer, I love like, I'll say Pride / a cabin trip, because Pride during the summer, like the month of June is just like my favorite time of the year, because it's like, we just all are gonna be gay and love our lives. And then I love a cabin trip over the summer where it's like hot outside, but it's cold inside, and there's greenery everywhere, and you're there with your friends, and you can wake up whenever, you can make breakfast. I love a summer cabin trip.
That sounds so nice right now. Essential.
Essential.
I'll breeze through mine here, listeners, but these are my 5 essentials. Bonfire at night or in the like early evening. Oh, that is just crazy. Crack of the wood, everything. Yeah. Pool in a book that goes together, or pool and audiobook, whatever that is for you. That goes together. One thing I'm super excited about is watermelon and mango. Fruit is at its peak during the summer. The best fruit, and watermelon and mango are those for me. Eating at a patio, that's a thing. I love eating at a patio. And finally, I can't. What?
Jack, you look like somebody that bring a book to a pool and actually read it. Most of us just bring that shit for decoration. Okay?
Seriously, make yourself look intellectual, but
no.
Jack's over here reading line for line at the pool. I'm over here just trying to look spiritual, okay? I'm over here just trying to let everybody know that I'm in touch. I'm at one with the universes and the cosmoses.
I haven't picked out what book I want to read this summer yet. There's a lot going on. But my last essential, I can't get this, but it's something about going to night market. When I was in Taiwan, going to the night market and during the summer. Yes, I'm not able to do that where I'm at right now in Lexington, but that is just the feeling it brings to me.
There's no night market in Lexington, Kentucky? What?
Don't play.
There is barely a farmer's market on Saturday morning.
Man, this city goes to bed at 8 p.m.
Yeah,
I'll stand on that. So I'm excited for transition to a new place. But no, that's my 5 essentials right there.
Dude, don't get me started on like honorable mentions. A margarita and a patio, bro.
Yeah.
I think what we all just said, we need to like intersect, so all happen like same day. Like make this a goal. Like we need to have all this happen at least like multiple times.
That's true. Maybe the next Generation Varied Creative Weekend will be with bonfires and beers and margaritas and bug spray, and all the other things you guys mentioned. That was
essentials.
Just being selfish.
Oh my gosh, one thing that is essential. My mom's grilling in the summer. Oh my god!
Shout out Kayla's mom.
Shout out Carla on that grill. Don't nobody grill like my mom, okay?
She's invited to the next creative weekend off the bat.
Carla is. Do you guys remember when she made ribs at Asbury? Y'all don't play with me.
I
Don't
was
play
a
with Carla.
vegetarian back in those days, so I remember, but I never had it.
Don't play with Carla, y'all. Don't play with her.
Well, as always, you guys, thank you for joining us today. We hope this episode brightened your day, and we really appreciate you listening and building community with us. We're so blessed to have this opportunity to record this podcast and have you all join us week after week. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate us 5 stars on all platforms and share this episode with all your friends. Follow us on social media at Generation Varied. And if there's any other topics that you want to hear us talk about in the future, shoot us a DM or email us at generationvaried@gmail.com. We truly could not do this without you. And we love you all. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you next week.